What's up, moms and dads? You ever just see your little Billy go from a novice with the old pigskin to a bona fide quarterback superstar? You get a satisfaction seeing that little tiger become the hottest thing since sliced bread right before your very eyes. Probably not, because let's be honest, your kids and mine are going to be abject failures no matter what we do. But I bet this feeling is similar to the one I had when I saw Frank Herbert's big, bad novel Dune be adapted faithfully to the big screen for the first time. Be me. Be in high school. Don't do homework because you're a disgusting gremlin whose only objective is to survive one day in a Colorado school so you can go home and play Metal Gear Solid 5 or something. Instead of socializing for lunch, which, ew, you decided to go to the library and go to the most innocuous spot to continue reading that big book that makes you look smarter than you actually are. Dune. That's right, I had a Dune phase. I was obsessed with that rich world of Arrakis. I couldn't get enough of that spice, baby.
Oh yes, I forgot to tell you. The spice.
I would read the novels and create an entire cast in my head. Paul Atreides played by Jacob Tremblay, Piter played by David Bowie, Duncan Idaho played by Oscar Isaac. I know, who the
Spice
is that? Needless to say, I spent a lot of time on the Dune wiki, and now I can put knows what a face dancer is on my resume.
You're hired!
Instant credibility, let me tell ya. When I was reading the original 6 books, there were hints and mumblings that another shot adaptation was in development. Back then, Dune felt like an incredibly niche thing. While token heads were out in town swinging their
Spice
around because they got a faithful adaptation, us Dune fans were left with the least weird and arguably worst film in David Lynch's filmography, a miniseries that nobody watched, and a revolutionary RTS exclusively played by Momin. Dune wasn't necessarily an obscure franchise, but it wasn't something your Freds and Megans knew about. So, who did they get to direct such a movie? Well, none other than the French-Canadian god himself, Denis Villeneuve. Even before the news was announced, I love Villeneuve's contemporary catalog of Enemy, Prisoners, and Sicario. All of them were fantastic. But surely he's gonna fall off. Nobody bouts a fat. Oh, wow. Well, I guess Dune is gonna be good by default.
There's something happening to me. There's something awakening in my mind. I can't control it.
Believe it or not, before the first trailer was dropped, the project was still fairly under the radar. Being a Dune fan before the announcement of the movie was pretty neat because you were cool on 2 different levels. Pre-first trailer, Dune was like this underground thing, a classic known only to those who immerse themselves in science fiction for all their life. It felt neat to talk to another Dune fan fluidly about the franchise. It felt like an exclusive club. But after the trailer was dropped, boy oh boy, did Dune fans such as myself feel like the cock of the walk. Suddenly, everyone on social media had to prove they read the books. It was like all those smelly science fiction fans who heard about the less than mainstream pinnacle of the genre were being vindicated for their dedication to the franchise. The trailer itself was like something out of a dream. You have to understand that David Lynch's adaptation tainted a lot of the general public's reception to the novel. While its weirder elements I thought were somewhat in the spirit of Frank Herbert's original, the execution was less than desirable. Like, why does it rain on Arrakis?
And how can this be? For he is the Kwisatz Haderach.
Okay.
This trailer symbolized a new era for Dune fans. Their high science fiction epic could be seen and appreciated by a wider audience, a la Peter Jackson's crack at the Lord of the Rings. The more marketing the film pushed out, the more surreal it felt. You'd see Funko Pops and billboards with House Atreides slapped on it. You could ask some rando off the street what a Fremen was, and the likelihood that they wouldn't say Morgan went up exponentially. As someone who got into the series only a couple years before the film's initial announcement, I couldn't imagine the joy of some OG Arrakis nuts. Man, a major blockbuster like Dune is exactly what we need to soothe the collective pain of 2020. Can't wait till we can all go back to the theater again.
The
the next time you see someone in a mask on the sidewalk or on the bike path, do not hesitate. Ask politely but firmly, would you please take off your mask?
The mask off your face. Come on, boys.
Goodbye.
Well, that certainly sucked. Anyways, Dune starts off with some serious stuff, man. You thought THX was intense? Wait until you feel the sensation of a Sardaukar spitting fire in your loins.
Cheeseburger, 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 Big Mac, Big Mac, Big Mac, Big Mac, Whopper, 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 Whopper.
God, it is such a subtle but perfect opening. Dune, for its iconic status, is still very, very weird. You need to set the right tone with an undecipherable language that sounds like it came from the gates of hell. Before you think we're gonna see sand, and boy howdy, I know you paid tickets to see some serious sand, baby. We start on Caladan, House of Trees HQ. This is one aspect of David Lynch's Dune that I think works a lot better than the contemporary version. In the 1984 version, Caladan is presented as an almost fantasy world with a gothic castle to top it off. However, the Villeneuve version of the planet is comparatively boring. It just feels like Scotland with spaceships.
Spice.
Scotland sucks. To its credit, there are some interior shots that feel like the gloomy castle that one may envision when reading the book. But other than that, it's rather uninspired. However, I think this is where my complaining about the film not portraying an accurate depiction of Herbert's prose ends. Because, goddamn, is this movie faithful. This could be said about all book-to-movie adaptations, but there's something incredibly satisfying about seeing a story you know like the back of your hand, lining up almost exactly of how you imagined reading it all the way back when. Nowhere is this more prevalent than with the depiction of everything House Harkonnen. For those unaware, Dune was supposed to be adapted way earlier by experimental Colombian filmmaker Alejandro Jodorowsky, which is the subject of the incredible Jodorowsky's Dune documentary. Of note, Jodorowsky hired H.R. Giger, the father of the Xenomorph and Aliens in general, to create the entire set of Giedi Prime, and my god, does it look incredible. You can see the crew's influence from Giger's work in every single element of the Harkonnens. Their home planet is a mess of wires and steel. Their pets are creatures with skin similar to latex. Their people are pale and ghostly. And the man at the center, the Baron himself, presented perfectly by Stellan Skarsgård. A late-stage Marlon Brando mixed with a Cenobite, and it works fantastically. It was almost eerie how accurate it was to my imagination while reading the book. Speaking of the reader's imagination, iconic scenes were directed with the gravitas they deserved. The first encounter of the sandworm is pitch perfect. You feel the importance of the creature as it rapidly slithers across the sand, able to eat a giant piece of machinery in one gulp. Denis Villeneuve was the only man for the job at directing such an important release. He does everything in his power to give the source material the respect it deserved. He didn't want to shy away from the weirder, more obtuse aspects of the franchise. In fact, you get the sense that he's delighted to put the unfilmable to film. And not only that, make it the most important release of the year. If you've ever been put in the unenviable position of explaining what Dune is to a novice, then you might have some idea why the task of directing a movie like this is quite the undertaking. Dune is like an ogre. It has layers. There are multiple different factions that you have to keep track of. Villeneuve made the wise decision to throw the novice into the world full stop, and let the movie play out as if you were on an alien planet. He doesn't explain how everything works. Mentats only get one scene where they show off their latent abilities, but everything that a newcomer needs to know is right there. As much as I love Frank Herbert's borderline spiritual internal monologues, I appreciate the movie instead chooses to show them as a boiled down future premonition, mostly revolving around Chani. It's so impressive that Villeneuve can condense page-long thoughts into quick montages. Paul can see into the future, he sees a mouse, he thinks its name sounds cool, bada bing, bada boom, what else you need? I have to be honest, it's really hard for me to not be blind with euphoria seeing Dune have an accurate adaptation. It feels crazy to see things like The Siege of House of Trees on the big screen, after you only had a book and a lackluster adaptation to see into the world of Arrakis. But that doesn't mean I can't find faults with the movie. My biggest gripe is that after the aforementioned siege and Jessica and Paul's escape from the captors, the movie just sort of goes on a decline. One of the major hurdles of adapting Dune that I don't think Denis Villeneuve overcame is that the visual of Arrakis is just sort of boring. Don't get me wrong, Arrakis is such a nuanced fictional location that is inherently interesting, but surface level, it's just sand. Constant shades of gray and tan just blot out any sort of visual appeal the movie may have. You're just sort of going around a desert, and the only interesting thing is that a big-ass worm might swallow you whole at any moment. The second half of the movie could have been a lot better if we could see Paul slowly become more and more of an uncaring sociopath on his way to becoming something short of a god. But the promise isn't fulfilled. Paul is still relatively the same what he was at the beginning of the movie, even though the harsh environment of Arrakis is meant to change him. Even during his battle with Jameis, he doesn't seem like a cold-blooded ruler. Though he may be able to detect every move from his enemy, it feels like there is still some fear in his eyes.
Dune.
Before the movie's release, maintaining a strong interest in Dune was surprisingly hard. Sure, there are 6 books by Frank Herbert, and literally a billion by his son and his small army of ghostwriters. But without a pop culture touchstone to anchor it, its popularity can only reach a ceiling. Villeneuve made it cool to be a Dune fan, and that's pretty special for us, who had to rely on whatever the
Spice.
this was as the only big screen love the series got. The film is a pleasantly faithful story that manages to cut the fat exclusive to the novel, but also struggles to maintain its momentum going into the third act. I'd give it 8 sauna barons out of 10. Thank you so much for watching my video. I know it may seem a bit rough, and that's because this video is kind of just a pseudo test of my new Blue Yeti and kind of just experimenting with how to use Premiere and After Effects and kind of hoping to get a little bit better at, editing and doing all this good stuff. So this is just kind of the beginning, and I hope to get better, and I hope you'll stick around and subscribe. Also follow my Twitter while you're here, and you all have a great day.